Assalamualaikum and a very good day I bid to everyone. So today, me and my group members will be presenting our group assignment for introductory statistics. Before that, let me introduce the group members for our presentation. Alright, so the table of content for our study includes 7 components. The first one is title, next is population and sample of study, the third one is objectives and significance of study, instruments, findings and analysis of data, conclusion and then references. The first component of our presentation is the title, which is Labours and Salaries in Malaysia. Okay, next is the population and sample of study. The sample that we use is a sample of study including 40 workers in Malaysia from different jobs with different salaries. The sample of the 40 respondents from random workers in Malaysia represents the population of workers all around Malaysia. Okay, next is the objective for our study. We have 4 objectives. The first one is to calculate the mean variance and standard deviation of monthly salaries among respondents. The second one is to identify the relationship between gender and monthly salaries of respondents. The third one is to identify the proportion of ages among the respondents. And the last one is to identify the relationship between education backgrounds and monthly salaries among the 40 respondents in our study. Okay, next is the significance of study. So the significance of our study in general is to provide information and initiate understanding about labours and its salaries in Malaysia. So the study also shows the relation between types of jobs and salaries, with the role of education backgrounds in determining the job and also salaries that we will receive each month. By this, people can be well informed and prepared in ensuring that their future are bright and stable, whether in terms of work ethic and also income. So in general, people can really observe and compare incomes of people based on education backgrounds and also age. This also helps to know what is to be done in order to obtain a well-balanced job. This at the same time shows vaguely the conditions and how labours and salaries in the country are connected. Okay, for the instruments. The sample for our study is gathered by constructing an online survey using Google Form. It contains several questions related to labours and salaries. After that, the Google Form was distributed using a link to all respondents through social media. Besides, we also use Microsoft Excel and Jamovi software to collect and analyze the data update. Okay, for the findings and analysis of data. So, figure 1.1 shows the percentages of each gender from 40 respondents. Figure 1.2 shows the percentages of ages from the selected 40 respondents, and figure 1.3 shows the proportion based on the education backgrounds of respondents. The last figure, which is figure 1.4, shows the collected data in the form of graph for the monthly salaries of all 40 respondents. Each of these figures are obtained from the Google form used to obtain our data for this study.
Now, I'm going to proceed to present my part on this assignment, which is Objective 1, to calculate the means, variance, and standard deviation of monthly salaries among the respondents. First of all, we need to find the sample mean. So we substitute the data from the figure 1.4, we get that sample mean is equal to 3,977.5. Second, we need to find the sample variance. So we also substitute the data from the previous figure, and we get that the sample variance is equal to 332924.35 at 974. Thirdly, we need to find the sample standard deviation. So we need to search the value of sample variance, and we get that sample standard deviation is equal to 1824.61. As you can see, this table shows the calculation for Microsoft Excel for the mean, variance, and standard.
Objective number 2 is U1A. From the calculation, the average monthly salary and the standard deviation for male respondent is 4,320 ringgit and 83 cent and 1,912 ringgit and 37 cent. The average monthly salary and standard deviation for female respondent is 3,462 ringgit and 50 cent and 1,605 ringgit and 25 cent. We want to test whether the mean salary of male is different with the mean salary of female or not. For this part, we are going to use the hypothesis test about the mean for two population. The null hypothesis is the mean salary for male and female is the same, and the alternative hypothesis are mean salary for male and female are different. The distribution that we use is t-distribution because both of them is less than 30. From the calculation, the value of test statistic we get is 1.479594 is less than the critical value. T is equal 1.686, which falls to non-rejection region. Thus, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, the mean salary for male does not have difference with the mean salary for the female. The conclusion that we get from this calculation is we can state the gender does not affect the salary.
Figure 2.2 shows the calculation by Microsoft Excel for the hypothesis test about the mean.
Okay, next we move on to the third objective of our study, which is to identify the proportion of ages among respondents towards each age class. If we want to figure out the proportion of ages among respondents towards each age classes are the same. Okay, for this objective, we are using the goodness of fit test to identify the proportion. For the age, we divide it into 6 classes of interval from 18, which is the minimum, until 59, which is the maximum. So the first step is to state the null and alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis is the proportion of ages among the respondents is the same towards each class. For alternative hypothesis, the proportion of ages among respondents is not the same towards each class. So if the proportion of ages among respondents is balanced towards each class, we can say that the probability for any randomly selected respondent to belong to any of the 6 age classes will be 1/6. This follows the null hypothesis. Then for the alternative hypothesis, we can say that at least 2 out of 5 probabilities are not equal to 1/6. Okay, the next step, step 2, is to select the distribution to be used. There are 6 categories, so we can say that it is a multinomial experiment. So we use chi-square distribution to make the test. The next step, step 3, is to determine the rejection and the non-rejection region. We are using significant level of 0.01, and the goodness of fit test, as we know, is always right-tailed. So the degree of freedom that we obtain following the formula k-1, we get 5 as the degree of freedom. And from that, following the chi-square distribution table, we get the test statistic value to be 15.086. Okay, the next step, step 4, is to calculate the value of the test statistic based on the data that we obtain. Okay, from here we can see you have 7 different components in the table. The first one is the category, which is involving 6 different age category. Then is the observed frequency, 0, based on the frequency for each category. Then we have T for the probability for each category, expected frequency with the symbol E. And from all these values, we can calculate the test statistic by following the formula, summation of observed frequency minus with the expected frequency, and then we square the value, and then we divide it with the expected frequency. And then from the table, we have obtained the value for each category, and then when we sum all of it, we get the value x squared equals to 20. Okay, the last step, step 5, which is to make a decision. The value of test statistic that we obtain, which is 20, is greater than critical value of x squared equals to 15.086, and it falls on the rejection region. Hence, we reject the null hypothesis, and we can state that the proportion of ages of respondent is not the same for all age classes. So based on the test goodness of fit test, we cannot say which age group has higher percentages of respondents. So in conclusion, the proportion of ages among respondents towards each age classes are not the same. Therefore, there are age classes that has higher or lower proportion from other classes. Okay. So here is the figure 2.3, which shows calculation by Jamovi software for the goodness of fit test. So from here, we can see that the value of test statistic x squared is equals to 20.9.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, I will continue for the last objective, which is to identify the relationship between education background and monthly salary class among the respondent. First of all, to identify the relationship between the education background and monthly salaries class among the respondent, first we must divide them the data into 2 classes, which is greater than mean or not greater than mean. To know whether the background, education background and monthly salary have a relation or not, so we will use the test of independence. So step 1, we must state the null and alternative hypothesis. So the null and alternative hypothesis are, for H0, the proportion of respondents that belong to the different education background are same in the salary class. Meanwhile, for the H1, the proportion of respondents that belong to the different education background are not same in the salary class. Next, we will select the distribution to be used. So thus we will use chi-square distribution to make a homogeneity test. Step 3, determine the rejection and non-rejection regions. So we are going to use 10% of significance level for this test because the homogeneity tests are right tail. So the area of rejection is 0.10 and it lies at the right tail of chi-square distribution curve. The contingency table contains 2 rows and 2 columns. Hence, the degree of freedom is equal to row minus 1 and column minus 1, which is 2 minus 1 and 2 minus 1, so the degree of freedom is 1. From the statistic tables, the value of x squared for degree of freedom of 1 and 0.1 area at the right tail of chi square is equal to 2.706. So next, we proceed to the step 4, which is calculate the value of test statistics. So first, we must find the expected frequency first. The formula to find the expected frequencies is equal to totals of row times with total of column divided by the total of both samples. So E is for having the education background and salary not higher than mean is equal to 8. For E having a education background and salary higher than mean is E equal to 12. Meanwhile, E for not having education background and salary not higher than mean, E is equal to 8. And E for not having education background and salary higher than mean, E is equal to 12. So proceed to find the test statistic. So the formula is submission of observer value minus with the expected value square over expected values. So as the calculation above, the value for x square is 3.75. So now, step 5 is make a decision. The value of test statistic x square is equal to 3.75, which is greater than critical value of x square, which is 2.706, and it falls on the rejection region. Thus, the null hypothesis is rejected. Therefore, we can conclude that the proportion of the respondents that belong to the different education background are not the same in salary class. Last, the figure 2.4 is showing the calculation by Jamovi for the test of independence. So the result is, for the test statistic, the value is 3.75. That's all for objective 4. So, for conclusion, this study actually analyzes 40 respondents from different working environments. Microsoft Excel and Jamovi is a software that we use to analyze all the answers from the respondent. So the demography shows the most respondents are from male with 16% respondent, and then the other 14% respondents are female. So the result shows that the 14 respondent ages from 19 to 59 years old, and half of them have education background. So the lowest salary was 1,900 ringgit and the highest salary is 9,100 ringgit. The average of respondent monthly salary is 3977.50 and the standard deviation is 1824.61. The average monthly salary and standard deviation for male respondent is 4320.83 and 1912.37. The average monthly salary and standard deviation for female is 3462.50 and 1605.25. With these two population means, we can test on the relationship between the gender and monthly salary of respondents with hypothesis of mean between two populations. From the calculation, we can conclude that there is no relationship between the gender and sex. There are also 40 respondents from age 19 to 59. For this, we class them in 6 class of ages, with each class ranging in 7 years of age. With this data, we can identify the proportion of ages among the respondents is the same for each age classes. By using the goodness of fit test, we can identify the proportion of ages among the respondents towards each age class. So from the calculation, we identify that the proportion of ages among the respondents towards each age class are not the same. Then half of respondents have education background, and the other half doesn't have education background. Then we want to identify the relationship between an education background and monthly salaries among the respondents. We divide them into 2 of other classes: monthly salary greater than mean monthly salary for 40 respondents, and not greater monthly salary less than mean. For this, we use test of independence, and from the calculation, we can conclude that the education background have a relationship between monthly salaries. So from the studies, the response from the respondents show that there are many factors that affect the salary received monthly, especially in education background and age, which in this case falls under the category of experiences. This is our references for our group assignment. That's all.
That's all from us. Thank you.